7 o'clock. Nick, are we ready to roll?
Yes, you're all set.
I'm sorry, are we on?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It is, I gotta look at the agenda to find out what date it is. It is Monday, November 27th. It is just past 7 o'clock. We're in downtown Hanover. We're gonna do good work for the town and have fun. We have an agenda that involves a public hearing, some discussion over natural burials, and then we're going to go over select board schedule for 2024 and some other business that we're going to discuss as well. The first thing we're going to do is I'd like to open a public hearing, which is one of three, regarding acquisitions, conveyances of real estate in the town of Hanover, pursuant to RSA 4114A process, as more fully described in the notice of public hearing in the Select Board Town Manager's Report. Now, this is a process that was approved at town meeting of 2023, which will be this year, and what we are acting on, or putting in the process of acting on, is a bunch, it looks like about a dozen or so, easement, conveyances, and acquisitions. And the process is that the select board holds two public meetings. How far apart? 11 days, 14 days apart?
No less than 10, no more than 14 days.
Thank you, Alex. And then there is a subsequent vote at a subsequent meeting, which I believe has to be in a prescribed amount of time, or can that be?
No less than 7 and no more than 14 days.
Thank you. So we have a very prescribed format, and this is new for us this year. And these are things that we have reviewed. These easements we have reviewed several times now. It is not unfamiliar to the select board, but this is a public hearing. I could just read the titles. There's Joanna. Joanna.
Of the 12, most of them have something to do with Dartmouth Land Holdings. Since I work for Dartmouth, I'm going to recuse myself.
Thank you, Joanna.
Step away.
Which does leave us with a quorum of 3. There's a Campion Rink drainage easement, which we're acquiring from Dartmouth College, Hanover and Porte Cochère, conveying to Dartmouth College, which is part of the front of the Hanover in there. Old Tuck Drive sidewalk easement, conveying to Dartmouth College. West Wheelock Sewer Pump Station, acquiring from Dartmouth College. That's at the bottom of the, right by the bridge. North College Street sidewalk, we are acquiring from Dartmouth College. North College Street retaining wall, conveying to Dartmouth College. That's right by the intersection with at the medical school. Pine Park pedestrian public access, release of easement from Town of Hanover. Removal of enforcement rights for 33 Goodfellow Road, which is in here as well. Transfers of easements to Lebanon, the Indian Ridge easement, the pond easement, all being conveyed to the City of Lebanon, and then the Six Trails easements also being conveyed to the City of Lebanon. And with respect, we've seen all of these before. I should make note that looking for the proper part of I stapled everything together, so I'm really nice and organized today. We have a lot of paper. This is the Conservation Commission did review all of these at their, except for the Goodfellow Road one, which I'll come back to in a second, at its July 12th meeting, and they voted unanimously to support the easement actions as presented, with the exception of the Goodfellow Road one, which I'll talk about in a second. And as I did not mention, that the role of the Conservation Commission in this process is to provide advisement in a non-binding fashion to the Select Board. So we got a memo from them dated July 27th, from their July 12th meeting. And we got all the easements.
And these all went through the planning board as well. Correct.
Yeah, you'll have a letter in your packet from Alex.
There should be from Alex Taft.
Aligning the board, planning board, they voted to support all of the actions.
Rob, yes, I'm looking at that right now.
And both of those are required steps of 4114.
Right.
Rob is prepared.
No. I was, just in case I'm going to be queried, I wanted to be at the mic.
Okay, all right.
Rob, I'm trying to find the planning board memo.
I know it was transmitted.
Is that the Alex Taft?
Yeah, it should
It's
be
the Alex
the
Taft.
third
No,
page
yeah.
of the second packet.
The second packet. Let me just read over here.
Here, Alex Taft, yep.
Planning board, for all practical purposes, endorse the actions for all of them.
I see, I'm looking at the memo right now. Thank you. And they recommended the release of the deed restriction for the Goodfellow Road property.
Correct.
Okay, just 1 second. Before we open the meeting for public comment, I just do want to make note of the fact that the Conservation Commission also sent us, or excuse me, Rob sent us a memo on behalf of the Conservation Commission regarding the Goodfellow property, and they voted to not support the transfer. So the planning board did support, and the Conservation Commission did not. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much, Rob. This is, I'm sorry, Carrie, do you want to?
No, I didn't know if, I'm always concerned about our television ratings, and I didn't know, I thought to enhance television ratings, that it might be good if Rob gave some explanatory background for people who maybe are not familiar with what we're doing. It's a whole lot of things, but kind of maybe big picture,
Sure.
what we're doing here tonight.
I'll try.
Okay, the ratings are contingent on you. Okay, so.
At town meeting, as noted earlier, town meeting 2023 the voters enabled the select board to transfer, purchase or sell lands. And all of these actions are part of the bundle of sticks of ownership, as our attorney likes to refer to them. It ranges from the acquisition or the giving of easements to the release of encumbrances and deeds. In the case of most of the Dartmouth town-related ones, some of them are fairly old. The portico share has been out there for a while. The pump station is up and running, and we should have ownership of it. The north College Street sidewalk has been extended and eliminated the old goat path. And these things need to now be documented in a way that allows for clear title and liability issue resolution. The Campion Rink is a drainage. The college is allowing us, the town, and Hanover Improvement to dump additional water on college land and improve that land for stormwater treatment. So we are making those changes. And the Lebanon properties, we have a host of lands and easements in Lebanon that were acquired as part of an older exchange. We've been trying to gift those to Lebanon for many years. We monitor them annually. We do trail work out there, the Town of Hanover does, and its Trails Committee. And Lebanon now has an interest in receiving them. So it's an opportune time to make that happen. With regards to the Dogford Road restriction, Goodfellow, I'm sorry. This is a peculiar one in that it was not a condition imposed by the town through an approval process. It was the subdivision approval that created this lot did not impose this restriction. However, a subsequent deed from the owner encumbered it and empowered the town to enforce the restriction. Our attorney has opined that this was one of those ownership bundles in our bundle of sticks of ownership, and that the proper way to dispose of it is to release it. The planning board, and again, it's one of these things where we were not given notice that it was a requirement. We, the town, and it's not customary for us to be aware of those things. So our attorney, working with the property owners, the attorney felt that this was the cleanest way to move forward and recommends its release. Okay. I believe, Alex, there's an email from Laura as part of the record that the select board have.
Yeah, I'm not sure Laura's letter was
It was not included. Maybe we see it for the next,
in
the next in our series of public hearings.
That's true, we have several bites
Yes.
to the apple.
Thank you for bringing that up. Would you like to add anything? Now, this is a public hearing, and the purpose of public hearings is to hear from the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak to these issues? Kari.
Good evening, I'm Kari Asmus, and I'm just speaking on my own behalf tonight, but as you may remember, I've kind of had an interest in this set of issues for a while, and I'm glad to see this going forward. I did want to mention that of these before us tonight, 5 of them have been included in packages before, but
Absolutely.
7 are brand new.
True.
And none of them have ever been discussed because they were all removed from the agenda. So I do have a couple of sort of basic questions that apply to a number of them. I think the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all have the phrase "for compensation paid" going in either direction. And I was wondering if anybody could answer, is that like a $1 compensation paid, or are there amounts that are greater than that?
Kari, before we address that, I do not agree with you with respect to we haven't discussed these before. We have discussed these several times, including maps, tax map.
They were in the packet, but because I wrote and said, I don't think you have the authority to act on these tonight, they were actually taken off the agenda and not discussed. But they were in the packet, 5
Right.
of them, 7
Right.
of them are brand new.
Right. I thought I recalled an extensive conversation as well. To answer your question, I'm not sure how to address that. Alex, Rob, any?
Yeah, I don't think, there's no budget line, we're not spending any money. If there's any, I can look into it more for the next public hearing, but as far as I'm aware, that's just standard legal language as part of any deed restriction or property transfer.
It's customarily $1.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's what I would just like to confirm.
Great, we
So,
can do that.
Yeah, and again, I'm trying to bundle the questions together and not ask them one by one. The other thing that's in common among a lot of these is that Hanover retains ownership of the land underneath the project, but there's the improvements are to be maintained by Dartmouth, essentially. And in many of these, we see, well, most of them we see insurance needs to be taken out by either party so that the other party is protected, and that's great. But I noticed on the Hanover Inn option that the Town of Hanover has the ability to compel that improvements be made if maintenance isn't kept up, including the town itself doing the maintenance and ensuring that things are safe. And in terms of the sidewalks, it's just a matter that there's insurance so that if something happens, that then the town isn't going to be liable, because somebody could come along and say, well, yeah, it was Dartmouth that was supposed to maintain it, but town owned it, so we're going to sue you as well. So there's insurance to cover that, but I was wondering whether there was any thought about having more of an enforcement so that if the town were to see that the retaining wall was not being maintained, or that the sidewalk that's on a bit of a slope was not being maintained properly year-round, that the town could take action rather than waiting for a mishap to occur, which insurance would cover, but of course, we would just rather see a mishap not occur.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have answer, but we can certainly talk about that for the next meeting as well.
Okay, that'd be great. Let me see, I guess, going down to the transfer of easements to Lebanon, unlike many of the other subjects above that had specific language, that we see the old deeds and we see the easements that the town holds, but we don't see what is being proposed. So I was wondering, is there anything, given that we don't have the specific language, is there anything that would prohibit the city of Lebanon, if these easements are transferred to them, to keep them from releasing them, at some time in the future? Because I think that while we would like to see them maintain them and so on, I don't think we would ever want to see those easements released. And given that we don't have language, I can't see that would never happen. I do also see, though, in that email that was undated from Vicki Smith to the town of, or the city of Lebanon, that there is on page 64 of the PDF, a reference to the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests, SPNHF, and they are referred to as holder of executive interest, and I wasn't able to ascertain what that meant. But that would be one possibility that would prevent the city of Lebanon from ever releasing the easements. But I can't tell from the information that is available.
I don't have that information either, but we can
Okay,
put that on our
so-
list.
So I guess I would just say that despite the fact that the Conservation Commission supported handing easements over, I don't know, because their minutes are not available, whether that was addressed, and I think that would be really important to address before any final decision is made. And then finally, on the Goodfellow Road transferal, again, there's no specific language there, and I was just wondering whether...
Excuse me, with regard to what, Karen?
The Goodfellow Road?
No specific language with regard to...
To releasing that easement. It shows a lot of the, and it doesn't have the Laura Spector email, and it shows the old deeds, but it doesn't say exactly what the language would be, and I was just wondering whether or not, there are two, and I think I know the answer to this, but I think it'd be good to make it explicit, that, there are two conditions in the deed. One is that there can't be a subdivision of less than 13 acres, and given that the whole parcel is 13.6, it's obvious that that's preventing any further subdivision. But then there's also a restriction on usage to a single-family home. And if you look at the rural residential zoning district uses, there are many uses that are much more intensive than that. So I guess that my question, and I can't quite tell from this, if the proposal is that you would release both restrictions or only the one, it's really only the subdivision that was addressed in the materials.
I think it's both.
Okay, so it was both?
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, that would just be, I guess, another thing that, I don't know whether Conservation Commission commented on that, but again, the acreage adjacent now is conserved land, and
Yep.
one might wonder whether a permanent sawmill, et cetera, would be a great usage, right there. And given the special exceptions, if they're allowed now, it's not easy to stop those. So that would just be something to consider, that it's not just a subdivision, but also usages.
Understood. Yep.
Okay, thank
And
you.
that was addressed by the Conservation Commission as part of their discussion.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the minutes aren't available, so I couldn't talk.
Yeah, I forgot who's writing them this week, or this month rather.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No, thank you, Kari. Those are excellent points. And we have the opportunity to continue this discussion. Is there anyone else who'd like to address regarding any of these multitude of easement issues? As we said, this is a new process. I think it's a good process, though. It certainly, I think, it really speeds things up, makes it much more efficient.
It's a little easier than once a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything from the board, Jenny? And Carrie also? All right, closing that public meeting. Then we're going to we'll open another one, excuse me, in not more than 7, but fewer, I forgot what it was already. All right, getting back to my agenda, I believe we're getting to public comment, but let me just verify that. Yes. Opening the public comment portion of the agenda, and just to remind the public, this is for issues not, we would hope that people would speak regarding issues not already on the agenda, and limit discussions to 5 minutes, and questions should be addressed to the chair of the select board. Anyone from public? Yes, ma'am.
Do you want me to sit here?
If you could, please, yes, and just tell us your name.
A little intimidating.
No, it isn't, I'm sorry.
Dina Romero, I live in Hanover. I've just come, and I apologize in advance that I am not totally familiar with all the processes involved in making things happen here in Hanover. But I wanted to express my support for the proposed zoning changes that I saw in the packet that came out for this meeting. There was quite a list.
Yes.
I wanted to encourage the select board, I've mentioned this to Alex, to form a housing committee. I've heard reference to Conservation Commission and Trails Committee or group, a housing committee that would help and be in support of getting the Main Brook project passed, and also make those proposed zoning changes a reality. It's from what I read in the Valley News, I was out of town, so I couldn't be present. It sounded like there are voices that have concerns, conservation concerns, and I think a housing committee that's fully in support of affordable workforce housing might be able to take on some of those issues with conservation. And my other comment is, and I know I sound like a broken record, Alex, but I really hope that the board would consider, and I know you're looking at budget, finding ways to support Lebanon's plan for the seasonal homeless shelter. We don't need, and I'm not asking for Hanover to create a homeless shelter. But on occasion, when I worked for the town, there were people who were homeless. And I think it's important that we do whatever we can to support Lebanon's effort. So those are my comments.
Thank you very much, Rika. You can, if you wanted to review the that public comment meeting that we had, I forgot the date, you can look at it on the CATV website.
I'm sorry, you know,
You can watch the recorded video of that meeting.
of that, yes,
Yes,
oh, good.
that might be
That's-
helpful to you.
That is good. I submitted comments in writing.
Thank you.
In support of the project. But, you know, my purpose is to try to get Hanover residents to understand that it is in our best interest to make sure that people who work in this town or who work at Dartmouth Hitchcock have a place to live.
Yep.
These are the people who take care of us. And if we continue ignoring their needs, we are going to end up being in trouble.
The whole community suffers, yeah. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? David?
David Vincelette from 93 Lebanon Street, Hanover. I come here because I'm a retired Army officer required by my oath of office to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It was interesting to see that Alex had a conversation with Sion Belog on a podcast. I believe it was Happenings, number 41, Hanover Happenings. I believe that's at the 41st podcast. I went and listened to it today, and I noticed on his website, on the channel, it has the symbol of that you've taken down from here. He still has it on his podcast, the Dartmouth Indian. But he had a long conversation with Sion Belog, and a lot of it was centered on the fact that they're interested in having very close relations between Dartmouth and Hanover and increasing their interactions with the college. And I fear that may have already happened to beyond what is reasonable and appropriate already. Hanover and Dartmouth shared a program to dump asphalt waste and coal tar on town roads. And for some reason, college and the town media and the town and college security have acted to hide the facts of what was done and to keep it out of the public ears. Now, part of what Sion said was that open speech and difficult conversations are important. I've been having a difficult conversation with this board for 18 years. It's been a one-sided conversation. Y'all don't converse, you just turn to different subjects. But Sion said there's supposed to be brave spaces where people are willing to talk about difficult subjects. So far, it's been 17 months that Alex has refused to call me back to talk to me about crimes committed by this town. He's being paid $160,000 a year, and he's got time to do 41 podcasts, but he doesn't have time to call me to discuss the fact that there's been criminal allegations against this town. Now, the new Dartmouth president has only been there 3 months, and they also refuse to take my calls. I'm not sure if Alex talked to Sion at all about my attempts to get Dartmouth to act appropriately and Hanover to act appropriately and at least have a conversation. I had heard this before, but silence is violence when the two largest voices, Hanover and Dartmouth, refuse to admit or discuss crimes against citizens, children, and students. But facts are stubborn things. Hanover and Dartmouth polluted Mink Brook and were caught by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Pollution of state waters is a violation of RSA 146 and the Federal Clean Water Act. When we began to complain about the fact the town put a fence around my property, held us illegally for 25 and a half months. We had our civil rights violated while town officers, police department, fire department, housing and public works knew we were being abused. We were forced to drink the water that the town was illegally polluting, and we had to live without fire and police protection, without a road to our property, and without a fire lane for us to seek medical attention. During the time I was held, I fell and fractured my spine. The police were unable to come through my driveway to take me to the hospital. I had to be rescued overland in a litter. From this town, I've yet to have anybody take responsibility for dumping poison in our water, for lying about it for years, or for holding us, when they finally released us, they came down and pulled the stakes out that held the fence, that allowed us to leave our property after 25 and a half months. They still didn't apologize for holding us hostage for 25 and a half months.
David, we're running out of time. Can you please wrap up?
Well, you won't answer questions, so I guess that's all I can do.
Is there anyone else to like to speak during public comment? Okay. Now we are moving on to item number 6, and the first, which is business requiring discussion. And the first item is natural burials. We received a memo from John Sherman, our Director of Parks and Recreation, going over the proposal, and attached to it is a oh no, this is the current ordinance number 25, excuse me. But the plan changes to ordinance number 25, which are highlighted in our in yellow in our packet. And I'm not sure who wants to address natural burials. I read the memo. It's very interesting. It's a topic I did not know anything about, but I learned a little bit about it over the weekend. Alex, do you have anything to say to this?
Yeah, I can do a quick overview, and then John will be here next meeting for the public hearing to answer any more questions. So
Great.
if there's any questions that any of you have tonight, I can take them back and talk more. But this is a pretty cool project. I'm excited. I've heard about this outside of Hanover and think this is like a great move that some communities have made, maybe over the last 5 or 10 years, more and more communities are talking about it. And there is some pretty significant environmental consequences from the way that we tend to do traditional burials in the US. 4 million gallons of embalming fluid used every year. The people who handle all of that, who work in the funeral homes, are at an increased risk of exposure to different health issues, including cancers. And I know some folks think that, and I know I've heard this in the past, is that cremation is sort of the more eco-friendly alternative, but it's really not. The stat that I saw was that cremations in the U.S. every year is the equivalent of exhaust from 52,000 vehicles on the road. And so there's pretty high environmental costs for the way that we tend to bury in this country, and this takes a step in a really interesting direction, which is not moving the entire process in Hanover, forcing natural burials, but making this an option in one of our cemeteries. So there'd be 300 plots that would be available for this, and it's something that has been discussed through Sustainable Hanover and at Parks and Rec, and there's a lot of interest and support for it. So yeah, John will be here next in a couple weeks to answer any questions, but I think we're all enthusiastic about bringing this before the select board and moving the needle a little bit on another environmental issue.
So, is this not permissible now? Couldn't you elect to be in a pine box with a simple shroud? Is that not permissible?
That is correct. That's my understanding. And that the way that plots are sort of divvied up is that isn't allowed. And the way the surface of the cemetery would look is very different in this sort of arrangement. So it's different headstones, different maintenance required. And so this would be in a separate section to allow the people that want to do traditional burials to continue to do so, and then the people who want to do a natural burial to do so.
Did folks get it? Sorry. Did folks get a chance while Kari's coming up to review the, I mean, we have a whole, really, we're not acting on this. We are later going to set a public hearing for Monday, December 11th. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted. I realized that was the question tonight, whether or not you were going to have a hearing on December 11th. So I wanted to bring up a couple of points because, of course, you need to know whether or not you'll have all the information that you need on December 11th. And I just wanted to bring up that RSA 289:6 and 7 require that towns have 3 trustees of the cemeteries, and if they don't have that, and the trustees of the cemeteries are the ones who are authorized by the state to adopt bylaws and regulations for the establishment and management of all municipal cemeteries. And that if a town doesn't want to have trustees of the cemeteries, then you have the option of going to town meeting and saying, would you like the select board to take on that authority, or would you like the town manager to? But I don't believe that we've ever done any of those things, and I don't know why we don't have trustees of the cemeteries, but it's an elected position, and I don't think any of us remember doing it, ever, electing them. So I guess my first question is, can we make sure that the select board under the current authorities granted by town meeting has the ability to enact this? And if not, what do we want to do? So should the attorney come back, however, and say, yes, you do? I guess one of the things that I was interested in, and I think that the sustainability folks first started talking about this in September, or that's when they had their first presentation, is that the city of Lebanon has adopted this. I think they were the first in the state, and I believe that they were going to open up that possibility starting in June of 22. So they've had probably a year's experience. I know that their ordinance goes into some detail about how the graves are dug because they didn't feel that they had the equipment that could do it. You have to be rather careful of the surrounding areas, that surrounding graves are not the same as when you have a coffin inside a vault, etc. So essentially those who, and it's in their ordinance, who want to opt for this option need to have it be, they need to contract with somebody to handpick it. And so their ordinance goes into quite a bit more detail, and then they also have regulations where people have to sign release of liability because certain things can happen in the natural burials that maybe people are not anticipating and they might get upset at the town for. So there's also the question of if you were going to promulgate those sorts of regulations, who would do that? And
Who would do what?
Regulations to, like, what would be in the release of liabilities. Because that's, again, the town needs to protect itself. So that's why the city of Lebanon has, this release of responsibilities. And then finally, I guess the last thing that I was interested in whether or not there had been any discussion about, I understand why Pine Knoll is, an obvious location to have a hybrid cemetery. But in the past, maybe 5 budget seasons, we've heard, that the town of Hanover feels that it's, perhaps running out of space. And that we need to be expanding capacity for burials, particularly if the town of Hanover is growing. or perhaps will go in the near future. And the summer, just coincidentally, I guess it's part of my, age, but I was talking to a Conservation Commission member, and we were saying, wouldn't it be nice if it turned out that there was a more wild townland where we could have natural burials, where we, somebody like me could really be, under the trees, etc. And we were thinking, yeah, and then that would open up more the existing capacity in the existing cemeteries for people who want traditional burials. So I guess I was just wondering whether or not we had explored all possibilities here, provided that we are able to go forward. And again, on that idea of commission lands, neither I nor the member knew whether there were any lands that would be feasible, etc. It's just a matter, again, of really looking at the big picture of what our town's needs are.
Thank you, Kari. You raise an interesting point. And we'll have more information from John.
Right, and
At our
then
next
maybe the
meeting.
part about the
Yep.
authority would be from the lawyers.
Yep.
I mean, the way I read the ordinance, it seemed like there was a lot of authority granted to the town manager. So I wonder if the authority had already.
Yeah, and I noticed there was from way back in '93 was the first iteration of this.
The RSA concerning cemetery trustees appears to have gone into effect like in 94, 95. So it could be that I can't remember what the date on this is.
93.
93. So it could be that it was enacted, that then the state
Change the rules.
passed statutes, and that the town of Hanover, I mean, it's easy to kind of ignore those things and say, we'll do it next year. So I did look pretty thoroughly at town reports from 94 forward, looking for, that warrant that specified, and I did not find it. That's not to say I couldn't have somehow missed it, but I didn't find it.
Okay.
I actually think you don't need to have a vault in the existing.
Really? I
cemetery.
thought it said that. Joanna. Doesn't it say that
it
here?
depends on the definition of a vault. And
What is a vault?
it's like a concrete thing that
Yeah,
goes in the
it
ground.
says you don't need a vault.
Oh, it
No,
does?
no, but I'm saying, you had asked, or
Yeah.
can you just put a box in the ground? And I think we need clarification, because from people I know, they just had a box that they put their ashes in that just went in the ground. They were cremated. So, I mean, I think, I don't really know the details of this. I like Alex, I think it's kind of an interesting proposal, but I think we should make sure the I's are dotted, T's are crossed. So I think there's some good questions raised by Kari and Carrie.
My understanding about the specifics was a lot of it comes down to each cemetery, and each cemetery has like rules associated with it, is usually the impediment to green burial. So there might, I don't know the specifics, if like it's written down for Pine Knolls, or if it's written down for other spaces.
But this ordinance 25 seems to apply to all
It does,
10 cemeteries, so it would just be interesting to know, I guess, some of the questions, should we have, or are we required to have trustees of cemeteries?
Yeah, that's a good question.
No.
And, are there, it would probably be good to clarify what can and can't happen in the different types of, in the different cemeteries, I guess.
And are any of the other cemeteries operating?
Actually, I think the one in, Kari, correct me if I'm wrong, but Hanover Center is still active, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Etna is, I think, sold out.
Which is it? Where's the Aetna one? And where's number 10? Where's number 10? Bowl.
The Leah
Both.
Cemetery?
I didn't print that out. Which one is?
Leah?
Balea?
Oh, that's off of Route 10. Bullion.
Oh, yeah, I know where that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hidden from, you can't really see. You can see it in the winter. It's right off, it's near the crew docks. And then the Goose Pond one is awesome. That's been closed for probably a century and a half. And the Tunis one, oh my golly gee, probably 2 centuries. Okay, interesting topic, to be continued. All right.
So
Budget,
you'll get some of those questions to John so we can have answers if we're gonna have a public hearing in a week. Great.
budget and finance updates. Alex, did you wanna?
Sure. So a couple different topics here related to the budget. The first is the tax rate for this tax year. And so last year we brought the preliminary tax rate from DRA to the select board. We discussed everything before DRA finalized the rate and we mailed out the tax bills. We attempted to do that this year, but hit a bit of a snag with a couple different factors at the same time, which it was including getting out things before Thanksgiving and also our tax collector's last day. And so when everything got posted electronically, Athos, we spoke a little bit about this, and I sent you all an update last week. When we posted everything electronically, the bills went out. We weren't quite ready for that yet. We were thinking they were going to go out tomorrow. So just wanted to make the point that we're planning on continuing that. I think that's a good practice, which is to, when we get the preliminary rate from the DRA, to come back to the select board, make sure we're all on the same page, there's no surprises or anything, and then get the bills out from there. So that's a point on the process side. On the numbers itself, because of additional unanticipated revenue of about $260,000 from the state of meals and rooms distribution to municipalities, the tax rate increase was lower than what we were expecting. And so out of that $260,000 in this budget year, we had, Ellen and I spoke to DRA, and what we decided to do was increase the overlay in the budget, which is the amount of money withheld, basically in case there are exemptions or abatements, and split the $260,000 so that we were using half of that money to give back to taxpayers currently, and half of that money to continue to build a healthier fund balance. So we've reduced our usage of the undesignated fund balance in this year's budget, not necessarily next year's, although hopefully we continue in that direction. And this just gives us a little bit of a cushion. And so we did a sort of similar thing last year, and based on the feedback that we got last year from the select board, from the finance committee, Ellen and I thought that splitting that difference would sort of make the most sense. So again, half of that goes to reduce the tax rate increase. We thought it was going to be 6.51%, it's 5.8%, so that's nice. And the other half of that goes towards basically helping rebuild our undesignated fund balance, which I know Hanover has our own calculation for the fund balance. By the state's numbers, we're at just a sliver below 5%, so we're at 4.8%, 5% being the state's recommended but not required minimum. And so this helps us go a little bit back in the right direction. So when we ran through that with our advisor from the DRA, she agreed that that was a good plan. And that's what has resulted in our 5.8% increase, which is a 4.39 cents for the municipal tax rate, not counting the fire district. So that's the tax rate portion of that.
Yeah, that seems to make a lot of sense. Go ahead, Karen.
So is there any sense that the meals and rooms tax distribution will continue at a higher level?
That is a good question. Okay. This is a bit of a hard thing, as you all probably laughing. This is only my second year trying to predict this number, but it is a pretty moving target. So I wouldn't count on the increase in this year necessarily meaning a relative trend in future years. We ask NHMA when we're doing the budget, that's one of the numbers that we ask them, what do they think the state is the direction they're going in. I think the tack that we took this budget year, and what probably would recommend doing next year is, estimating the revenue conservatively, and then if we get more, this happens, which is nice, rather than obviously the other direction.
And just to drill down, is it because of higher, the pie is bigger, there's a bigger rooms and meals revenue stream, or is it having to do with the way they slice the pie, which would be maybe more, if it were the latter, if it were the former, it might have more staying power, because the pie's bigger, but if it's just them playing with the way they slice it, who knows?
I'm not 100% sure. I thought it was the former, but as you're asking, that it was a larger amount than the state was anticipating, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
So I can find out a little more about that.
I think it's because there's more rooms and meals tax, so we get more.
That's what I think
I
too.
mean, they haven't given us what they're supposed to be giving us for many years. And it's something like 25%, we're supposed to get 75% or, but when they get a bigger hunk of money, then we see more, at least in my time.
It's based on population. So if we increase our population, we'll get more.
Yeah.
As
Percent,
long
as a higher
as,
percentage,
as long
as the higher.
rooms and meals.
Yeah, as
stay
long as
revenue.
rooms and meals,
I mean, they've been
as
grabbing
long as
that.
New Hampshire is still doing okay.
But that's how they slice it,
Yeah.
so maybe to the extent that next year is as good as this year, maybe that's something we'll see next year,
Right.
Yeah, okay,
Or they may take the whole thing,
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
which they've done in the past.
Statutorily, there is a law that says we're supposed to get a certain amount, but every year, or every biennial, it's like
And it's,
discretional.
and it's on a per capita basis. So-
Right, as Jenny
So if
said.
our population grows, we might get a little more.
If it grows relatively larger than other places.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yeah.
But that still doesn't guarantee anything. I mean,
Right.
They could just
No.
grab it, even though there's a law saying they can't grab it.
Right,
Which kind of makes me smile when you talk about regulations and RSAs. But that's not mine too, I'm not a judge.
And on the overlay, that is simply a mechanism for us to, it's not that we're necessarily expecting a different result, but it's a way for us to basically sweep it into the undesignated fund balance.
Yeah, and the number is a bit of a moving target too. It's been off for a couple of years about what we expected and then what it was. We were comfortable with 100,000 this year, but also more comfortable with a slightly larger number. It's not super exact. We did bring that number down a little bit this year with expecting fewer abatements and exemptions, but it'll be sort of interesting at the end of the year where that number landed, because maybe that will help a little bit for next year. We obviously had a couple of rough years with all the appeals, and I think those numbers were higher than they normally would be. But mostly that's the mechanism that we have access to when we get that tax rate. That's the only number that we could change. Yeah.
Yeah, I think your plan makes sense, Alex. Carrie, did you want, Carrie, excuse me.
I guess, so I have gotten a couple of questions from Finance Committee members. We are meeting on Thursday, so I hope to get the questions into Ellen and perhaps we'll get them back. But one of the things in particular, and Alex, you did bring this up, the retained balance is now at 4.8%. That's down from 6% last year, about $500,000 less than last year, or 15%. And so the question is, why did our retained balance go down by 15%? The way that the state calculates it, but at the last meeting that I attended, I think that was your last meeting too, Ellen had represented that the way that the town calculates the undesignated fund balance, it sort of seemed like it was staying steady. So that's the question, is why does the state think that it's going down, but what we're thinking locally is that it's about, it's fine.
Yeah.
And in particular, how did it go down $500,000? When, it looked like, we used less of the undesignated fund balance than was voted. Ellen had mentioned at another meeting that we had used in this past fiscal year more we needed more overlay than we had, but that was only $15,000. So there's really this question of what happened to the $500,000. And I don't know if you.
I can
Yeah.
talk to Ellen about that and,
Yeah.
you know, see if we can get, you said Thursday?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thursday, 5 o'clock.
Okay, see if we can
So that would be
get
good.
something by then.
I guess the other thing that, maybe just to give an overall picture too, yes, the general fund came in like 3 cents lower than we thought. Fire districts, the blended fire districts are up 1 cent more than we thought. But the really great news is that the school district, where we thought they were going to come in at a 6.6% increase, and they're 6% of our tax bill, they came in 34 cents lower. So that was a huge, they were very fortunate in having leftover funds from the last fiscal year and getting some additional revenues. So the overall taxes that people are going to see going up this year, including fire districts, 4.2%, very close to what you said, but we had thought that it was going to be much higher. That said, taxes on a $500,000 home for this coming year are $9,250. So we're closing in on $10,000 for a $500,000 home, which, as we know, that's not, that can be a modest home here. And $10,000 for some households is a lot. So I guess it would just be a matter that as we go forward, we often hear, well, it's only another $50 or it's only another $120 or whatever. But when we're looking at, $10,000 overall, the town is closer to $3,000 of that. It's still something that we just need to be mindful of. Yeah, that was good news about rooms and meals. And I guess one last thing on that, just if you were wondering, we send more money to Concord than we get back.
Yeah, we shouldn't feel guilty about that.
Well, and that, we may be sending even more money to Concord than we get back, depending on what happens on this school situation.
Yeah. Although right now, we get about $800,000 from the state. For the past 2 years, we've been given state aid for education, which is the first time
Ever.
I mean, when we first came to town, we were sending $1 million to Concord, and that reached, went back to zero, and now it's going in the other way. So we'll see.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Yeah.
Alice, anything else?
Sorry?
Are we done?
Nope, all right, we can go on to the next budget thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
So the next one is an updated request about ARPA allocations. And so pretty much the morning after the last select board meeting, we had some conversations internally looking at some of the projects. And one of the things that we should have flagged before the meeting, but we thought it was important enough to come back with, is moving, well, $50,000 would enable the project I'm about to describe, though it's not the full cost of it. But basically, taking $50,000 out of the money that we had allocated towards the Main Street reconstruction project, and moving that into a project that we're calling zoning code rewrite. And this is related to the multiple phase housing opportunity grant funds that we did the first phase this year, which produced that really wonderful missing middle report by Opticos that I think was shared around, and that was just a really
well
good,
done. Very well done.
really, really interesting and relevant information. The state, the whole idea of the Housing Opportunities Program grant was that there was going to be a second phase, which would be to rewrite our zoning ordinance based on all the findings from the first phase. That funding has dried up, so I guess, I don't know, something about scales balancing or something. So that has dried up, and we really want to keep the momentum going. We're going in a really good direction right now with making some changes to our zoning ordinance. And so what we're asking for is to move $50,000 out of that Main Street project into this zoning code rewrite. That would enable us to do basically the second phase of this project the way that we had originally intended. It's $50,000 that we're asking for from ARPA, and then there's another $30,000 or so that's needed. The whole cost of the project is in the 80s to do the entire rewrite. I bulleted out, I don't know if you want me to read that out here, but bulleted out some of the different changes that would be implemented in our zoning ordinance.
I'm trying to remember, did we vote on those or just have a consensus that it was okay? Meaning,
What do you mean, zoning changes?
The ARPA
no, the ARPA,
applications?
yeah.
The ARPA.
That's a good
I don't
question.
recall. It might be in
It's
the
in the
minutes.
minutes.
It might be in the minutes.
It'd be in the
Yeah,
minutes.
let's check the.
I'm only asking because we have to.
We should do the same
Yeah.
if we're gonna do, yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. So anyway, so we were disappointed that the money dried up, but also a lot of good momentum here, and this would make, this is probably one of the most constructive things that we can do, housing related in Hanover. So we thought it was worth coming back to. You all see what you think?
Quick question.
Go ahead.
My question was just it seems like a very optimistic schedule to be able to do a complete zoning rewrite and have it done in April.
Right.
So is that, I mean, is Opticos like,
I think they're all ready to go, because we were hoping for the funding.
Okay.
I agree, it's a fast move.
And it may, I mean, we do have 5 or so elections next year, so I mean, we could, in theory, vote on a zoning, have a special zoning thing, not in May. I mean, I just think that
Right.
we should be clear that if we're changing how we're spending ARPA money, putting it into Opticos, I don't want people to have an expectation that we're gonna have a magical new zoning ordinance to vote on in May.
Right.
Because I think it's probably not realistic, but I'm just guessing. I mean, I think it would be good to find out, because I read this as though, we'll have a whole thing in April, we can vote on it in May.
Right.
It would be great if we could do that, but it would be good to know what we can.
Was that the intent though, or is this just to push us in that direction?
I think it's to push us, because even April would be too late to add new zoning ordinances, to have it go through the planning board and all the process, so.
Okay.
So I don't think that this is meant to be done by town meeting next year, but rather it's gonna take that time to work on.
Yeah.
And we have to allocate ARPA money
Right,
ASAP.
right.
So I just want the expectations.
Yeah.
For it to be clear.
Right.
because it
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
clear.
That's fair,
that
I can get a better timeline.
That wasn't my expectation that I thought, but I'm glad you're articulating it.
We did, on the November 6th meeting, we did in fact vote.
Voted,
the
okay.
ARPA funds, yes.
So we should revote.
I was wondering about why use the ARPA funds to cover 50,000 and not 86,000 if from the master plan, housing and rezoning is one of the most important things.
50,000 is what we, is sort of the minimum, is sort of what we need to be able to do it. The 86,000 would cover the whole cost of the project and would allow Rob to keep a little bit of money in the planning consulting lines, which would certainly be a benefit. I mean, I guess from my own personal perspective, if the select board was interested in spending 80 or 86 of the ARPA instead of the 50, I would support that. The difference, the 30,000 or 36,000 in the multi-million-dollar mainstream, that whole project is, a bit of a drop in the bucket, whereas, that could make a bigger impact being spent here. So for whatever it's worth, from my perspective, it would certainly help relieve a little pressure on Rob's budget, and I would certainly agree it's important enough. The $30,000 would get a higher value here than the larger project.
Yeah.
But
So
that's
do you
different.
recommend the full 86 then?
Well,
Go, Karen.
is there a possibility though that it may not cost the full 86 and therefore we're,
I think that's how much it
not
costs.
using some of our ARPA money? I'm sorry.
I think that's how much it costs. The next phase of the project was already costed out. prior
was
to us
taking his
not, that's like
plan.
phase
Is it like if
two.
it's under,
discretion.
if
Yeah,
it came in
it's
under
just-
budget, basically, are we sort of losing the money?
Yeah, is it time and materials, or is it a fixed price? I don't know.
It's a cost of the consultants, from what I understand.
But if it comes in less, are we gonna lose some ARPA money?
I don't know, I think right now we're losing like all of our consulting line and possibility of maybe applying for grants or doing other planning. It seems to suck out $30,000 in planning for something that we think is really important to fund. But yeah, maybe 80 instead of 86 if we're worried that we could maybe come under.
That's a good idea.
Because I'm not really sure actually what
Okay.
happens if we did commit the money and it was part of a contract and it was ARPA money and then it wasn't spent. But if you wanted to give a little cushion there, I would agree, Jenny, you know, that throwing it still would make a huge difference on the operating budget for consulting and planning. And $6,000, we'll
Kari,
figure that out.
So Carly, I decided I'd make my trip into town really worthwhile by coming up to the table lots and lots of times. So anyway, so thank you. But I just wanted, first of all, to point out that there was $15,000 left unallocated at the last discussion that was to be used for something, and I left here being a little bit worried that we could lose $15,000 because we hadn't allocated it. And now that you are having this discussion, I wanted to bring that up. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the thing that I brought up at the last meeting, which was the home internet grants for $10,000. I'm afraid I probably wasn't obvious enough. The reason why I asked whether or not that was going to be means tested is because, you know, expenditures need to have both a public purpose as well as a public benefit. And I think, the only way that I could figure out that it would have a public benefit by going to individuals is if it were having the town fulfill obligations to those in need somehow, which is why I asked if it was going to be means tested. If it's not going to be means tested, I'm having a really hard time thinking about how it is going to provide a public benefit. So
we went back on that, and we were gonna have a means tested.
we're going to have it means
Yes.
tested? Okay, I did not understand that from the conversation.
No, that was a conversation.
Okay.
Also, this money is different though than from the general principle. It's not.
It's not tax, no, it's not
Except
tax money,
it's tax money that we spent to the federal government, of course.
locally, but
Right.
but now that it's come to us, it's the same thing with trust funds money, money that's given to the Conservation Commission by private sources. It's a public resource once it comes to you, and that's when this public purpose, public benefit kicks in. So, but I guess I'm still thinking if you're, thinking about how the money would be most effectively used to help those who are having a hard time living here, would the, $250 or $500 hotspot, helper writing the zoning, that's up to you now that I understand that you were having that means test, that I hadn't understood that. And I apologize for not having understood that.
A lot happened at that meeting.
Yeah, it did, so
It
anyway,
was a long one, as I recall. All right,
but again.
thank you, Kari. So, we need a motion to do, what are we proposing? Basically going to 80,000.
I had another question though, if we're dealing with ARPA funds. I don't understand fully what they can be used for. It seemed like, and I don't know how our Main Street sidewalks, it would be categorized, but it seemed like if it's categorized as a transportation project, that they're limited to 30% of our ARPA funds, which would be significantly less. Because we have 1.2.
I'm not aware of any restriction on money for that project. I can double check that, but we've run through it a couple times and run through the projects with NHMA as well. So I don't know if you want to send me the exact language that you're looking at.
I sent it,
Okay.
but I can send it again. Is it a Title I or transportation project, or is it something else?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, so if you could just send me exactly what you're looking at, like I'm happy to look into it a little bit more.
Sure.
I mean,
I don't know what you mean by Title I.
The NHMA and the federal government said that ARPA funds that are given out as the, I'm gonna get the acronym wrong, it looks like SLRPA.
Yeah.
The local funding mechanisms have restrictions for transportation projects. And one of the restrictions is it should only be 30% of your ARPA funds. And I think we have 1.2.
Million, yep, for ARPA,
30% of that would be less than
which
500,000.
is 400,000.
We were thinking 600,000 for that.
Yeah,
And
so
now we
if there
dropped
is
to
a
400,000.
400,000.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
just
we'll
not
have plenty for the
sure
zoning.
about this constraint, so I mean, if I can look at the
We need to look
exact
into it.
language that you're pulling from and like the link or
Sure.
something along those lines, then I can look into that more.
Okay, why don't we,
So should we move to reallocate
yes,
funds that we had identified, ARPA funds that we had identified for the Main Street project to $80,000 of those funds to implement or to update our zoning to reflect our,
70,000, because there's a 15,000 unaccounted for.
I wouldn't, I mean, if you want to, I wouldn't mind leaving that 15,000. We left a little bit there
Okay.
on purpose, just for the next month, if we figure out something, we missed something, or,
Got it.
yeah.
Sorry, Joe.
okay, and so
Okay.
you're gonna, but we're not gonna let that, we're not gonna lose that 15, right?
No,
Okay,
that is
because
not,
we have to have a
Yeah.
vote here and decide how it's
Right,
gonna be spent.
right.
And we're gonna do that before the end of the year,
we'll do it as soon as we have that, yeah.
right?
Yeah,
But
so we just wanted to leave a little, we just had a
a
bunch of,
little cushion.
yeah.
So are you okay with 80,000? Okay, so here we go.
you had a motion.
86.
I had a motion.
So we have a motion, is there a second?
My motion is
I thought you did the motion
I
already.
know, but Carrie's looking at me as though I didn't put my number.
You did. You said
Okay,
86.
I said $86,000
Yep.
from the Main Street
Wait,
towards
no, we're
the
doing 80.
updated.
We're doing 80.
Okay, $80,000 from Main Street project to update our zoning.
Sorry.
To improve, to address all kinds of challenges associated with our zoning, but in particular having to do with our.
That's a long motion.
It is, but, it's all being recorded, so someone magically out there is gonna put it in the minutes.
Is there a second?
I have a second.
Jenny seconded that, great. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that passes. Are we done with that section?
Yeah, one last very short budget update, which was just an update that we sent out our operating requests and our capital requests. So we have our new CIPC form that Pete Kabaki helped put together based on feedback from the new Capital Improvement Program Committee. So that included a couple new questions this year to help track some of the stuff that we're asking about. All that has been sent out to departments. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have, we've got some meetings scheduled with different departments where we're going over requests, especially as it relates to staff and compensation. That's obviously the big ticket item, and also a lot of questions around that. So we are on track to the timeline that I provided 1 or 2 meetings back. We're still we were about a week behind kind of getting everything out, but we're generally on track. That's it.
Thank you, Alex. I guess we could have done this part a few minutes ago. The next item is a recommendation to set a public hearing on Monday, December 11th, 2023, to review and discuss amending Ordinance number 25, Municipal Cemeteries Rules and Regulations to include natural burials. We just discussed this. I'll move that we. I'll move this as I just read it. Is there a second?
Second.
Great.
A little discussion. There's a bunch of questions I
Yep.
want to raise, so we just need to make sure we have
Yep.
answers before that public hearing.
Yep, I'll look into all
Great.
those.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then the select board schedule, which I did not look at. I did not compare it to my calendar, but
So the most important dates are like the 7
oh geez.
questions at the end of February, right?
Yeah, so wait a minute, what's going on then? A lot of questions here.
Well, so the week of the 18th, and I know Jenny, I don't know if that impacts you, the February 18th week, the President's Week,
School out.
school out, and I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. That's very far in the future.
Yeah, no,
I know, but some
School-
people
school
actually,
holiday
it's
week, yeah.
school vacation, so,
yeah.
so I'm assuming it's either the week of the 19th or the week of the 26th.
And I would say the later end of anything that we're looking at is probably safer for whatever it's
Yeah.
worth.
Yes.
Take that extra week or two.
And sometimes we've used the fourth night, right?
Right. So
Yeah, really.
should we, I mean, the other dates, it's just like 2 meetings a week.
What
Two meetings a week.
Well, 2 meetings a month, right? But February, I mean, the budget meetings are the ones that really kind of, it's a lot. And they're like 3 or 4 in a row, so that week it's good if we can get consensus on those days. And so I suggest we do it the week, February 26th through 29th.
I agree. And then you risk not having some public who could join and, or maybe some select board members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're suggesting not doing the 18th?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm suggesting just do the last week based on what Alex just said and the fact that President's Day is the 19th and that's probably vacation week.
It
Yeah.
is. No, it is.
Is it?
Yeah, I checked it. Yep.
Excuse me. We traditionally start those at 5. Just looking at my schedule, it's going to be difficult for me to make 5 o'clock any of those days. I wonder if we could push that back a little bit. Even 6 would be better on all of those days for me. But we can discuss that further when we get there, I guess.
I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, if we start at 6, it's fine. I just think that we need to make a commitment that we're done by 11.
Oh, we should be done by 11. We should be done by
Before 11?
That was the grade.
Yeah.
No, but I was just, I think that we just need to.
Truly shocking.
Yeah,
No, I mean, we need to be done by 9, basically.
Yeah.
5 hours
3
times
hours.
3.
well, we start at 5 and we go to 10, so
I know.
we can't do that.
And we're gonna come to you all, and we've got some questions for Select Board and Finance Committee just about, we're not quite there yet, but just as, I don't think we're gonna do as many slides as last year. I think,
Yeah.
we're gonna do more, no kidding.
Not as many.
Right, not the
Twice
same
as much.
exact number,
Twice as
right. But trying to figure out a way to make sure to focus the presentations in that time and our time and the department head's time on what key information do people really want out of those presentations. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
hoping to streamline that a little bit.
I think Kari had a.
Kari!
Yes, yeah.
Wait, who's in the audience there? Who's that woman?
Yes, so now I do have my finance committee hat on, and we didn't really talk about the timeline at the last meeting because there's so much to discuss. But it mentioned that finance committee getting materials, 5 days in advance. And I just wanted to point out that in the past, we also had a very good conversation in advance of the budget presentation with the town manager and the finance director. And we found that in the past that helped minimize some of the questions that finance committee members have anyway in meetings, and that there's sometimes things that, many people are already aware of. So just when you were talking about ways to keep things moving along, that pre-meeting is helpful. I also wanted to point out one thing that didn't happen last year and that's not on that list is the meeting with social service agencies sometime in January.
Yeah, we wrapped that into one of the scheduled town meetings. Excuse me, select board meetings.
Okay, I didn't see it, but I thought that was also
We did not have a special standalone.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
No, but in previous years, and I have to say that's part of that, public purpose, public benefit, accountability thing, having the social servants agencies come in and make their presentation. That did not happen last year, but that was always part of the budget process previously. And that would be the time when the homeless shelter that we just heard about in Lebanon, that if they felt that they sometimes served Hanover residents, could make the case that we, heard what the public wanted. Last year, Youth in Action, their budget was cut by the select board from $14,000 down to $10,000. I don't think that made it onto the radar screen, and in part because we didn't have that conversation. They're sort of small amounts, but they are things that a lot of people care passionately about.
Wasn't it?
It was
So
a
it
reduction in
wasn't
the request, but not a cut. As if I
No,
remember correctly.
they had asked
They
for
asked-
considerable more
Right,
than
and-
they normally had asked for, and
But-
that's why we didn't give it to them.
Will,
Because they didn't have the rationale, I completely agree, we
right,
should
but
just have,
but
a
if
day
they
that they-
come, then you
And-
can ask
yeah,
them,
so-
right,
but it did, no, in 22, their budget, no, I'm sorry, in 23, their budget was 14,000. Again, we're talking about small amounts, but for them, it's a big amount. And for the year that we're in now, it went from $14,000 to this year, it's $10,000. So I don't know why that was. And again, small amount, but big amount to them. And, that's sort of why we've, had the social service agencies come in before.
Yeah, what we can
So
do
should
is
we do
wrap
it-
them into one of our scheduled meetings.
We're planning, we've
Yeah.
communicated with them already, we're planning on them likely to present, it's probably not what we're gonna recommend doing in the future. We have some reorganizations that were, to make that work a little bit better. But this year, at least, we've already communicated back out to them that they should be prepared to come and present.
and
Thank you.
do we
That was
do
something we
it
had
the week
heard that
of the
people wanted.
26th, or do we do it the 5th of February before? our
Probably
budget
before,
hearings?
it'll probably be not a super long, it'll be,
And I think in the past, it maybe was even January.
So-
We only did that one year, though. I mean, we used to do it wrapped into the budget
Budget,
meetings, and
yeah.
then, which was just not appropriate. So we will wrap it, we'll figure out which one to wrap it into, and we'll talk about that later.
Thank you.
All right, so,
Can
let's,
we, also on the calendar, just,
Yes, more on the calendar.
So, yeah, December, can we just look at December for a second?
December,
Yeah, December 2020.
Oh, come on.
Okay, so we have a meeting scheduled for Monday, December 23rd, and the 2 days after, town offices are closed for Christmas Eve and Christmas. So I wonder if we wouldn't be better served having those two meetings on the 2nd and the 16th. So,
I suggest just figuring it out when we get, like, in October and after town meeting and all that. I don't think we need to look at December. It's a good idea, but I wouldn't make any changes.
Why not?
Because
That's the
it's
whole-
so
that's-
far
that's-
away.
That's the whole point of
Who
discussing
knows,
it now.
who knows who's gonna be here?
well, said 12 months in the calendar, we're supposed to be.
I mean, I know
approving.
Kari will be here, but she's the only guarantee.
But I think, if you just look at that, so you come back from Thanksgiving, kind of like we're doing right now, and that Monday you have a meeting.
The
and
second,
that's
you mean?
The second, and that's 2 weeks after the prior
Okay.
meeting, and then the 16th, and then you don't have to worry about it the week of Christmas.
So I would just throw out the second, this was a little difficult having the meeting right after Thanksgiving because we're closed a couple days before the
Yeah.
meeting. That was just a little complicated. I mean, Carrie, I'm totally with you on the 23rd. That's not a great day for a meeting. And so I don't know if we want to maybe do the 9th and the 16th. I would just say the second, it's not as bad as the 23rd, but having those couple days off before, it was definitely challenging to
You
get
guys,
everything.
I don't even
for
think we
this
should,
meeting.
I don't think we should act on it, because we don't know what our constraints are gonna be. I mean, this year, we've rescheduled a couple of times based on things that have come up and things that we need to do. So we may need to rush a meeting then. I mean, sure, the
Or
9th
just
and 16th.
cancel it altogether.
Or cancel it altogether. So I just,
I like that.
Carrie, I don't mean to be argumentative, but it's so far away. As Jenny just said, it's so far away that,
I don't
No,
think you wanna,
it's-
you don't wanna
February
do
was far
your,
away
yeah,
from
you don't wanna
Jenny.
do your calendaring based on me, I'm gonna say.
I
go with
don't mean
your.
to sound like, I just, no, I've been here so long, we usually change it
Okay.
then anyway.
Okay.
Are there any overlap with any holidays that we didn't, the Indigenous Peoples' Day, we talked
Yeah,
about,
we're good.
we're good.
High holidays.
We're good.
September holidays are okay?
We're good. Yep.
Because they're not marked on this calendar, I don't really know what
No,
everything
they're
is.
not. Yep.
Okay, except for Labor Day.
I may not be here that first meeting in March, but I will be here for the budget.
Again, that's so far away.
I know, but I'm just letting you know.
Hopefully Nancy will be back. Is she, where is she? Is she in Egypt now?
No.
All right. Minutes, November 6th. Did anybody read them?
I did,
Jenny
but I
usually
wasn't
reads them.
here, so I can't vote.
Yes, I read them. They look fine.
Jenny?
I didn't read the ones I didn't double check that these, yeah, I did read them. I think they're all,
I thought they were fine. I looked at them. And we were all there that day, correct? Joanna was absent. Okay.
Joanna
But
was not
the
there.
three of us were there. All right. I move that we accept the minutes of November 6th.
I had sent a couple corrections that aren't in,
Do you remember what they were?
yeah,
Yeah, you wrote them. I remember seeing that.
yeah, they're not in here, okay.
I could look up your email if you want. Do you have it?
I can, so on the parking garage stuff on page 3, where it talks about me talking, sorry, I should count the lines. It's right under public hearing opened. That's because the street parking is more expensive than the garage parking. It's the substance of it.
I'm sorry. Say it again, please.
So what's written is opposite.
It says there's I had a question about the consistency,
Right.
which is true, but because the street parking is
Okay.
less expensive than the garage parking.
But it says
Every duration.
Further in the sentence, it says, as garage rates are consistently higher than street parking rates at every duration.
Oh, so, okay. So it did get changed then.
Are you good? Was it?
It's just interesting, because I thought it was changed too, and then I looked at this Friday mailing packet.
I'm looking at the
Which
online version.
Okay, so are we, which version are we looking at? That's the question. Like, what do you have in this?
Same thing.
As this?
Can I look a little closer?
Oh, sorry. Like, so here, it doesn't talk about.
No, it's different.
Right, so,
This is different than that.
So
oh, you have this different. Because I just re-downloaded this today, just before I came, but maybe I just downloaded it from the wrong place. So,
Yeah,
can I look at
yeah, of
this?
course you can.
I'll make sure that the online
Okay,
version.
yeah, so this is all good. Then I
Okay.
already made my
Do
minor
you remember if there
correction.
was another comment that you had, or correction?
I just corrected some typos of like
Oh,
names and stuff.
okay.
I
I think we can,
I don't,
so you're okay with this version, because that has that incorporated? All right.
yeah.
So, I think I moved that. Is there a second?
Second.
Any
Yes.
discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Joanne abstained.
I abstained.
Okay.
I was just reading the agenda and it says action requested for the select board schedule. Did you need a motion for that?
Do we need a motion for that?
To approve the proposed schedule?
Might as well do it to set the dates.
Oh, after I was,
Well, then we should move that 23rd
oh,
one.
for crying out loud. Why do we need a motion?
I was just reading the notes on the agenda.
All right.
It says discuss and approve.
Yeah,
And
Where
it
does
would
it say
be
that?
nice,
Where does it say that?
it would
I
be
think
nice
we'll probably
to have
find
an
either way, but we might
approved.
as well.
It would be nice to have an approved schedule on the website because, for
What do
planning.
people,
For
what
those
do
who
you,
plan ahead.
what do you argumentative people want to do?
I move that we approve the budget for as proposed, the 2024 select board schedule with the modification that the December 23rd meeting be changed to December 16th.
Okay. I'll second that.
And the February?
And the
February?
And that the February meetings, the budget meetings proposed begin February 26th and goes through the 29th if needed.
And we are gonna, you don't have times written on here.
We can, that's one that we all agree with you, we can discuss as we get closer.
Okay.
Come on, you said we were gonna have fun on this.
That's true.
We never
That's
have
true.
fun here.
Okay.
So tonight
All
we're
right.
having a little fun.
At my expense. I think I already seconded that. So is any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I could put, well, we're acting on 3, and we are tabling 1 again, which I guess is part of the consent agenda, because we're still tabling it. So there are donations to the Edna Library, which I'll get to, and I will read those after we vote. There's a banner request for the Howe Library. I saw it, it looked quite reasonable. It's in our packet. There's approval of New Hampshire Department of Safety appointment of Tracy Walsh, Senior Assistant Clerk / Deputy Director of Administrative Services, as a Town of Hanover Municipal Agent. And then we are, number 4, we are tabling, I guess we don't have to vote on this, recommendation to adopt the Advisory Board of Assessors recommendations. We're still tabling. That is one portion of the Advisory Board of Assessors recommendation. That,
Right.
The Friends of
table
Hanover.
the 11th.
Yeah,
Right.
I forgot the number of that. Yep. Okay. Right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Move.
Oh, go, yeah, thank you. We need a motion.
Move to approve consent agenda items 1 through 3.
Wonderful.
I'll second that motion, Carrie.
This is wonderful. We're moving like
Fun, yeah.
a well-oiled machine. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So we are still tabling item number 4. I don't know if, you didn't put that in there, but
No.
we don't have to vote on something we did. I don't, doesn't matter. We're not doing it anyway. And then we are going to reports and communications. What? What did I miss now?
You said you were going to highlight.
Oh, thank
the
you.
very-
Thank you. Do you have it?
Yes, I do.
You always have it.
Yes, here we go.
So there's some wonderful donations to the Etna Library, excuse me, Carrie. From the Muriel E. and Edward C. Wachter Charitable Foundation in the amount of $500, John P. and Nancy C. Collier in the amount of $1,000, and the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation's Headlight Fund in the amount of $1,000. Those are wonderful donations, and it's just heartwarming to receive them. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Town manager report, please, Alex.
All right. Also, I don't know, I mean, it's not a big thing, but format, was that a little, I'm trying to get, is it a little
Yes.
improved? Right, okay.
Yes.
I'm just trying to clean things up, and I've got some more plans over the next month or 2 to get some more stuff in here, but I want to keep it organized and not overwhelming. So the first is just a couple upcoming events, and so of course, this weekend coming up is sort of the kickoff of a lot of our downtown holiday type stuff. And so let's see, Celebrate the Season is Friday, December 1st at 5:15. That is our annual tree lighting.
Is that 5:15?
5:15, yes, on the green. And there will also be the annual chili cook-off that UVBA hosts.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And are you cooking or eating?
Oh, no, eating.
Okay. And Parks and Rec will also have a new sort of s'mores and letter to Santa workshop. The next day on Saturday is the Snow Much Fun Fair, which is on Allen Street. Santa will be there. There'll be all sorts of fun stuff happening. That is from 12 to 2 on Saturday. And then there's some more events as we get a little further into the month. Like a gingerbread house at RWB on December 13th. So we've got a couple things coming up in December.
Alex?
Yes.
Just to make a big plug for downtown on Friday night, it starts at 5 and goes till 7.
Yes.
There's stuff at the Nascoma Bank.
All
There's
over,
stuff
yeah.
all over, so everyone should come on down.
It is it's a very fun, active time in the downtown. Thank you for adding that. Yes. So that should be great. Let's see, moving on to human resources related stuff. In the last month, we've had 4 employees leave employment and 2 start, though I think I might have listed one of them last month, which is Avery Crotty to human resources and Melissa Ball to community nurse, who is supplementing Doris, not replacing. Our retention and recruitment study, the study portion of meeting with our staff is complete. So we're finishing the sort of data analysis, and we've begun to draft new concept plans and policies that we have been working on with department heads, with the select board in our last meeting to get feedback and revise. Over the next couple of weeks and month, we're meeting, we had another couple hour, maybe a 3-hour meeting with department heads today. We have another 2 or 3 hour meeting next week. And a bunch of individual meetings in between, so there's a lot to talk about. And then we'll start to dig into some of those discussions with our collective bargaining units as well. And then that will start to get integrated into the budgeting process, and once moved a few more steps forward, will be more part of the sort of public discussion through the budgeting process. So we're very excited about that. A lot of changes. The fire chief job search, we have received a number of highly qualified and competitive applications. We are still accepting them sort of on a rolling basis, and we are beginning some of the interview screening process now.
What's your timeline for that, Alex?
So the overall timeline, it depends a little bit on how the next step goes as far as we have a target number of candidates that we want to cut the process down to, and so we may need to add an additional interview step than what we have, but basically what we're looking at doing is having finalists identified. Most likely we'd like by maybe the end of January, but probably closer to February, and then make a selection and anticipate a couple months, 2 to 3 months for somebody to actually begin, so that the new chief would start probably somewhere around April of next year. And they would have been selected several months prior, but for department head positions, try and anticipate 60 to 90 days needed for somebody. So
does in terms of the interview process, are you using Zoom to do the first round and then you bring them here, or how do
it's not Zoom, but the first round is remote, and then the finalists will be in person. And so we've gotten feedback from staff and firefighters about how they want to be involved in the process, and I think we have a really good process and a lot of really good applications. So that's good. Employee recognition. So I want to congratulate Lisa Camara. This is one of our dispatchers. So this is kind of cool. She received the 2023 Dispatcher of the Year Award from the North Country Public Safety Foundation. So Governor Sununu presented her with the award for more than 30 years in the dispatching profession. So that was kind of cool. I got a little picture of her with Doug Hackett and the governor. If you want to meet Lisa, you can in Hanover Happenings number 20, which is, well, actually, most of them are my favorites. But this is a really great one because we interview and discuss with about 5 or 6 different dispatchers what it's like to do that job and what sort of things they've run into over the years, and some really interesting information about how that all kind of works behind the scenes. And Lisa is one of our longer serving dispatchers. The budget and finance, just sort of gave that update already. Just a reminder that taxes are due December 28th. Housing, redevelopment, and planning. Again, I'm trying to create some of these different sections so that there's a little more consistency from report to report. So there's not really much to update about Mink Brook Community Workforce Housing Project, other than that the 2 attorneys are in discussion based on the feedback that we got from the last meeting that we referenced earlier tonight and the surveys that were online. The next is there is a postcard that will soon be mailed to all property owners in Hanover to start to move people who are renting their property to register online. We are still hiring. It's taken a little longer than we were hoping, but still hiring for the rental housing inspector position. We do have some good potential candidates, but we want to get the registration process started, so folks should just be aware. Everybody's going to be receiving the postcard in town. And if you do rent your property, there's a QR code and a URL. You can go online and learn a little more. about that and register, which is pretty easy to do. The next is sort of this new transportation and mobility section. And so we did send letters to the New Hampshire Department of Transportation requesting a crosswalk in the Dunster-Wythe area and to reduce the speed limit on Enna Road. At the point of writing the report, I had not heard back, but as of this moment, I did hear back. And so we did hear back, let me pull up my note, that they have assigned a couple of their different divisions to review both of those requests from DOT. I did ask for a timeline about what that would look like on their end, and I haven't heard back on that yet, just so we have a little bit of an ETA on how long their review would take. They've also sent us some guidelines about looking at the speed feedback signs in Etna, which is something that they said we can do on our own as long as we meet the state's guidelines about how those are put together. So I have that queued up for our next traffic safety staff meeting, which I believe is next week, just to take the feedback from DOT about that and see if there's something we can do in the short term. I'm pretty sure I remember there was a resident who offered to donate a speed feedback sign, if I'm remembering correctly. Or pay for it.
He did, but we should.
Yeah,
we should pay for that.
I kind of agree, but
No, we should not, you know,
It's very
for safety, yeah.
His concerns were so
calling.
in line with, you know, they're so awesome, but that is a public responsibility.
Right. So we will. So I'll see when we get more information back. If we get any sort of timelines or updates, I'll pass that along. And we'll see if there's anything that we can do on the town side in the meantime. So I'm not sure how long that review process takes. But we sent over all the speed data, we sent over the pedestrian counts from the planning commission, so everything got sent over to, so they've got everything that they should need, hopefully, to move those forward. Downtown, we are past Small Business Saturday, but we did make a little push this year. Some retailers offered different discounts and whatnot, and so that's something that we'll certainly do every year after Thanksgiving. Try and encourage people to head downtown, and one of the benefits, of course, is that instead of driving to lots of different stores, you can, if you're driving, you can park, and we encourage people to walk around the downtown. We've got an interesting fun plan called Starry Night that I'm going to leave a little vague. There's a bunch of business owners that are working with Dartmouth College on a creative way to light up the downtown a little bit more. And so I don't know exactly when that is going to start, but it's going to be some kind of holiday festive lights that are new this year. And so I will give a thanks to Dartmouth for sort of, and a couple of the business owners like John Pepper at Beloco who really broached that conversation. But it's just one of those kind of low-hanging fruit things when you put everybody together and what you can come up with. So hopefully this will be the first year for that, but there's a couple other towns that do the thing that we're looking at doing, and it does look quite nice. So we'll see. And then sustaining engagement is a topic that we've been talking about in our downtown group for the last couple months, which is finding ways to formalize and sustain this sort of what has been described as a bit of a scrappy group of people who've come together around the downtown stuff since we put the meetings together about a year and a half ago. But we're hoping that by January or February to have a little bit more to bring to the select board about how to structure that going forward. I posted a link to, so I did have a conversation with Dartmouth's new president, Sion Bylock, and I posted a link just in the sort of college and town relationship category. I thought that was an interesting conversation with Sion, and then also the link to the conversation with Emma Wolf, the VP of Government and Community Relations. So those are both up online if people want to listen and hear a little bit more from each of them. A couple other updates. So Hanover Police secured their CALIA accreditation. So if folks remember, this is something that they have been working on for several years. This was started in 2021. CALIA is an accreditation for law enforcement agencies, and there's only about 20 towns in New Hampshire that have gotten that. It takes a pretty considerable amount of work to get to that point. I mentioned in the report that that's more than 30 meetings with different stakeholders, the school district, college officials, residents, business owners. There's it's a former police chief, part of CALEA, who comes out and conducts a lot of the interviews, and it's meant to ensure that Hanover Police is not only writing policies that adhere to sort of the best practices from a law enforcement perspective, but that they're actually following those policies as well. And so that's why they talk to community members and make sure that, at least for the feedback that they get, they look online, they do all sorts of things to make sure that we are living based on the policies that we set. And CALEA has a couple, having that accreditation has a couple benefits. One is that it is a really nice way. So ideally, it should boost public confidence in the department, knowing that there's this outside third-party agency that reviews a lot of these policies. But it's also really good from a recruitment standpoint, which is, of course, a challenge right now with a lot of our departments, but including police. And that people want to work, many people, and the police officers you want to hire want to work in an accredited department that has high standards and best practices in place. The other thing, and it's funny, actually, Primex reached out today about this, which was a little sort of out of left field a little bit because we haven't contacted them, but we also get some reductions on some of our insurance premiums when the accreditation is in place, which is nice. So I don't actually have those numbers. I was hoping to get that for tonight. It's not a huge amount, but it is something. So that's kind of nice that Primex does that to help incentivize police departments to go through the process.
Yeah, I think the board should recognize the hard work and energy and ambition to put this together. It's fantastic for everybody, including our officers, but as importantly, the community. So.
Yeah, agreed. So that's great. A couple other quick updates. Wanted to give a little recap. Oh, totally forgot to record this episode for the podcast today. So I wanted to do a little recap of the New Hampshire Municipal Association Annual Conference, which was last week, 2 weeks ago. And we had a bunch of people who went down this year for the first time, which is really exciting. I think it's really important for to support staff who want to go to these sorts of things and go to sessions and workshops and meet colleagues, but also to make that more of the norm among especially our department heads, but really anybody. So this year we had Norm, our assessing director, Jerry, field appraiser, Tracy Walsh, our senior clerk, Ellen, finance director, Carrie, my executive assistant, myself, and then Katie, our HR director. She was had a sick day or two last week, so she couldn't end up making it, but was on the schedule for it. And what I wanted to do was I'm going to do a quick 10-minute podcast with everybody who went to talk a little bit about what sessions they went to and what they got out of it, and try and make sure that we encourage that sort of professional development with our staff. I was also asked to speak this year, and I presented alongside the city manager in Lebanon, and Cheryl Linder, who now is the Bow finance director, and we were talking a lot about onboarding and succession planning and knowledge management and transition. And so we were talking a little bit about what we're trying to do here and what we're sort of going through in this huge labor transition that we're in. But it's also the topic at all of these conferences right now. It's kind of incredible. It was the keynote session at NHMA, which was they got a really excellent speaker talking about sort of multi-generational workplaces and just what is sort of happening in a lot of municipal governments. That was the same topic that was the keynote session at the ICMA conference in Austin. So it's kind of on the front of everybody's minds. And of course, I always enjoy being out in these things and talking about some of the projects and ideas that we're working on as well. And of course, with me and Sean on the same panel, between Hanover and Lebanon, there's obviously a lot of competition between our towns from an employment standpoint. So there's some good jest about all of that, but it's also good that we do talk to each other as neighboring communities, and all of us in the region meet about some of these issues so that we're not just sort of taking employees from one town to the other town, but obviously trying to figure out ways to get more people to come into the workforce as many retire. The last piece on my report is just a sort of small project that's very near and dear to me, which is just talking and working on generally trying to increase civic participation and sort of blanking on the word I'm looking for, civic literacy, the ability and accessibility for people to engage in all of these processes. Town meetings in New Hampshire, sort of gone through the crash course and spent a lot of time with other town managers and other officials in New Hampshire and Vermont. And, like Hanover, a lot of places have seen declining participation over the last 5, 10, 15 years, except when there's one major issue that brings everybody out. But sometimes that can, as some towns in New Hampshire have found, that can be a little too late. And so trying to figure out ways, not just in Hanover, but more broadly, how do we get more people interested in coming out to these meetings? What are some of the roadblocks? We have a couple ideas that we're talking about among our election officials and our staff that we're going to try for next year to try and make it a little easier for people to get to town meeting and to stay there and to be engaged while they're there. But I will also say that I've gotten really positive feedback. New Hampshire Municipal Association is collaborating on a project. The Municipal Management Association, the Department of Revenue Administration, and then just got confirmation actually a few minutes ago from Dave Scanlon, the Secretary of State, that they're interested as well. And basically a bunch of different state agencies and organizations in New Hampshire coming together to identify, source best practices from different towns about how to get people engaged, what can you do at town meeting to keep people engaged, all that sort of stuff. And so that is something that I think Hanover, having a generally a good civic environment, can be sort of a statewide leader there. So, but I've just been very pleased. I've got 20 or 30 other town managers who are interested in this as well, and who have seen declining participation. We've had a couple town clerks, a couple town moderators, a lot of interest here, and the state has been really receptive as basically saying, how can we help? Which is cool. So hopefully some of these ideas will help get a few more folks out of town meeting next year, and maybe keep a few folks to the end. And then some of what we try here can maybe also be tried in other places as well. So
Yeah, keep us informed on that, Alex.
yeah, it's exciting, and I'll definitely do so. Yeah, and that's it.
Thank you. Select board reports. Joanna?
I'll be quick.
You'll-
Trustee of trust funds met on Halloween for an hour to discuss the percent funds. Spent a fair amount of time talking about the percent funds and continuing to work through process, guidelines, policies on that. Our next meeting is on Friday morning here in Town Hall at 7:30 a.m. And the master plan, the Sustainable Master Plan Committee, the draft is out in the world. We had online survey for comments. People could submit their comments. We get about 55 different comments from people.
Really?
And we're meeting tomorrow at 5 to review them and discuss how we address them. And we'll make the recommendations to the planning board, and then the planning board will have the document and should be able to schedule a public hearing for adoption soon. It's come together really nicely. So a lot of hard work. Kudos to Vicki Smith and the planning office for really doing the yeoman's work to get this beast. I mean, it's a very comprehensive and really good document.
And it's available on the town website for review by anyone who wants to look at it.
Right.
Is the missing middle up on the website?
The Optico's presentation.
I think it is.
It's on the town website, but
not
I don't
on the
know, it's not on the
master
master plan website. But
But it's kind of a key ingredient. I feel like it should be.
Linked.
Yeah, it should
Okay,
be
think
linked.
I will, that's a good suggestion.
yeah, I think it might be
I think it's referenced. I mean,
referenced
it's
in the
referenced in
appendix
there.
of the housing chapter.
And
But
there's,
it
and we
wasn't,
use some
it wasn't
graphics.
published when they put out that draft.
Yep.
Yep.
So it should be
Yeah.
included in it.
Good suggestion. I will make sure that happens.
Is that it? Good?
Yeah.
Carrie?
Finance Committee is meeting this Thursday, so no meeting since November 6th. The Capital Improvement Program Committee met on November 17th. I was absent, so I'll let Jenny speak to that.
Okay. The Conservation Commission met on the 15th of this month. We discussed the easement on Goodfellow. We discussed finances of the Conservation Commission. It's a complex issue, especially looking for other sources of funding. As everybody knows, the main source of funding is the funds that come out of current use when property is moved, and that is not going to likely be a stable fund source moving forward. They also are discussing potential for a steward position, which is in its first iteration of discussing, and we'll hear more about that in the future. And they were looking for ways to encourage, discussing with the planning board, encourage development in the town, in the center of town, basically looking at ways to keep development where development is most recommended by the master plan. Jen?
Yeah, the Capital Improvement Committee met on the 17th, and they passed bylaws, and they defined a capital improvement as something that's going to take at least 6 years, or will be projected out for 6 years, which
Was it 8
is
years?
it's a statutory minimum.
6-year planning period.
6-year
but
planning.
8-year definition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A 6-year planning period, 8-year, and then 100,000 cut off. But in that 100,000, it can be phased over time, and it could be bundled, like lots of things that are smaller, like pedestrian flashers that could be bought in bulk for good savings at Costco. Those were the two big things there. The planning board, I think it was the 16th. I don't know. It was that same week. They met to discuss the same easements, which they all passed, and primarily the Greensboro Church and the legal considerations around the church, and how the same zoning standards can't necessarily be applied to a church due to some recent court activity around churches. And then they were going to meet more about that after consulting with council.
It's like Supreme Court decisions.
Yeah.
Around churches, which basically says they're kind of exempt from all zoning, right?
Yeah, that they shouldn't be treated differently, yet they're exempt from more things than others. So to be treated differently.
Exactly.
Yeah, so they were getting more clarification over exactly what could be specified and what could not be specified. And that's all very down to recent court cases. Hanover Bike Walk met on the 13th, and we revisited Verona, and the committee is very much in favor of, if possible, to connect our network, that should be a multi-use path. But if that's not possible because it's crazy expensive, no, I think it's just moving some poles. There's enough right of way. It's just about whether or not it's cost effective to move the poles. That if it's not cost effective, and the network analysis bears that it's not that important to have a continued multi-use path from the Grillbrook to put in the sidewalk. And then there's a lot of interest, we should touch on a little bit from the information from the Traffic Safety Committee and when information is coming back. And the same fellow, Dodd Stacy, who had offered to buy the speed feedback sign, has reiterated that, he's also interested in creating a path across his land, which is a good segment of that village area in Etna Village that would go towards the general store if the town could help maintain it as like a path, like a 3-season path, essentially much like the Grillbrook path. So I wanted to just make sure everybody understood that as well. Yeah, and then the engineers have gotten their machine learning model to count people as they walk across the screen and count bicycles. And right now, it is still learning about scooters. It counts them as 2 people. But, so they need to.
3 for what?
Scooters.
Scooters.
Yeah, they need to feed it more, they need to teach it more.
Twice as much.
Yeah, it's coming along.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's fun to watch the video and a little count, like a person go by and the count go up. I just watch it for hours.
That's
Yeah,
It's like when you first get your solar array and you watch your meter
Oh,
go
yeah, yeah,
backwards,
yeah.
and you sit out there going, wow, that's cool.
Thank you, Jenny. All
You gotta
right.
be a nerd if you sit up here.
That's
So there's
true.
been a request for a non-public session for discussion pursuant to RSA 91:1:3, Roman numeral 2, good night, Corey, A, B, D, E, L, and, is that an I?
Yeah.
I have trouble with that one, I always do, every meeting. Jen?
Did I
Roll
say
call, you gotta say your
Chamberlain?
name.
Chamberlain, yes?
Thank you. Massius, yes.
Callahan, yes.
Whitcomb, yes.
Thank you, we're in non-public session. Thank you.